Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum and welcome to Hidayat Television Network's brand new show, Voice of Youth. To all the viewers, first of all, Ramadan Mubarak, and I hope you enjoy the bounties of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala throughout this month. Voice of Youth, as you're aware, this is a brand new program presented to you by Hidayat Television Network's Birmingham studios. I'm your presenter, I'm your host, Ali Mohsin Hashmi. The idea of this show, Voice of Youth, is purely to highlight the issues that our youth are facing in today's day and age. We are thoroughly aware as to what this community demands, what our youth demand, and it would not be unfair to say that the success of any nation is purely dependent on the youth. Therefore, the future is purely built up on how strong and how strengthful your youth are. Amongst our Asian community, there are certain challenges that our youth are facing, and we can't deny the fact that youth to a degree are actually one of the neglected entities of the society. This program has been designed purely to give youth a chance to actually explain their views, their issues, and highlight them in the eyes of our experts, and hopefully we give them a fair chance to get those issues heard. As we are thoroughly aware that education is one of the major issues that we are facing even on the grassroots level, and also on the higher education level amongst the Asians. Along with integration problems, the crime rate is quite ever so growing high. We also have unemployment and ever so growing crime rate, which directly reflects the fact that unemployment means deprivation, and when there is deprivation, people actually try to make ends meet, which result into further crime, and then that is the criminology basics in today's views of analysts. We're also aware that government is going through some very difficult time because of tough economic climate. Government has decided to pull back £650 million out of the public spending, which means 500,000 unemployed would join the queue of unemployment, which directly refers to the fact that our youth needs attention more than ever in the past. Hopefully, this program has been designed in a way where we would welcome all the calls that you would be able to join through, and also we would like to hear from you. You can send us an email. We've designed an email. There is an email address that you can send your concerns, questions and queries to, and it is VOY, which is voiceofyouth@hidayat.tv. You can send us the email, you can join us by calling in, and also we welcome you if you wish to join us live in the studios and you want to form part of our youth panel in this program. Then we would like to hear from you, and we would welcome you in the studio so you could sit with us live in front of the panelists and then ask them the questions, from the responsibles, and hopefully we would get the right message and right answers, and hopefully by the end of this show we would have a resolution to the problem that we're facing in today's day and age. Without further ado, I'd like to introduce the panel today. On my left hand side we have Sister Sayyida Qurratullain Zaidi, who is Youth Community Development Manager, working with various councils, working with private and public sector, has extensive service to the youth, not just the Asian youth but also youth at all levels. In the Midlands, she's actually thoroughly worked on various projects, and one of the most successful projects is NEAT, which does not require any introduction. All of us are aware of this, BEST being one of the parent project of NEAT. We would talk to Sister Qurratullain on these issues. Next to Qurratullain is our Sister Amina Bukhari. Does not require any introduction. You've seen her on various seminars, various summits, and also some conferences that we recently hosted in the past, and a true academic and senior analyst, and also working for Birmingham Chamber of Commerce. Currently working for the youth, as well as working for the education sector in the community, not necessarily just the Asian, but working for the welfare of deprived and community where there isn't much available. So you're currently working on a immediate project called Acorn Primary School. We will talk about that as well, and hopefully we would welcome you to join us as well in the studios. So let's kick-start the show talking about one of the basics of our issues in the community. Youth are facing the challenge of very difficult times when, you know, everybody's talking about public spending cuts. Everybody's talking about youth are doing this, youth are doing that. There are some statistics that we would first share with our public today, and then we will talk about them. So 15.9% rise in crime rate amongst the Asian youth, which really from last year in April the 17th, 2010 is when it was last increased, recorded at 7% from 2009. And this year in April, 15.9% is the crime rate that's gone up by. And on the same note, 11% reduction in higher education. So the university graduates we saw last year and university graduates that we've experienced this year, there's a decrease of 11%. Similar stats in school dropouts, something we were talking about prior to show starting, 44% and 32% as well, which really is an eye-opener for us. So alongside working with, talking about the issues such as education, crime rate, unemployment, matrimonial affairs, arranged marriages due to peer pressure, integration in the society, in particular after 9/11 and 7/7, drugs, drug mafia and identity crisis that we briefly talked about as well before starting the show. So how do you think it is important for us to identify the importance of education in our community? And what other challenges do you think we're facing to begin with, Sister Kuratulain?
From a young people's perspective, there's so many different factors that influence them for education, and that consists of the family, the culture, the community, where they live, and the outside peers, which all influence them as it mould them into an individual who they are.
Yeah. And
the education dropout is no great surprise, because there's a lot of Asian young people who have not special needs, but the young people who are academics and the young people who are more hands-on through education. So if you get a young person who's not so academic but more smarter and more advanced in hands-on work, then they're obviously they're going to underachieve in mainstream education.
Does that sit in line with what you're working on currently?
Yes, because the project I used to run, the BEST, which stands for Basic Employment Skills Training. I work with young people who were at risk of being excluded or at risk of becoming NEETs, which means not in education employment training.
Right.
And 90% of the young people I work with, considering I work with 200 young people a year for 4 years, 90% of the young people had the intelligence, but they weren't pen and paper in the school environment. They wanted somewhere relaxed, and they wanted something they could relate to.
Right.
So some of my projects
What sort of age group are we talking about?
I work with 13 to 25. Okay. So the 13 to 15, 16 would be before GCSEs.
Right.
Who were kicked out because they're not meeting the par or the needed.
So this is directly going back to the point where there is a school dropout rate of 44% amongst Pakistani community.
So with them, I work with something that they enjoy, but also I realised that a lot of young people nowadays have a low level of numeracy and literacy in everyday thing. They can't, especially with so much technology being so advanced. Yeah. They in their schoolwork they write as a text. They speak as they do to their friends, not knowing there's a different way of communicating, writing, and so on. Right. So my program for the 13 to 15s were something I could enjoy. Some were hairdressing, some were music, some support. Skilled in different areas, like motor mechanics. I did that. They were all accredited training where they'll get a national qualification at the end of it. Right. So more hands-on. And believe it or not, out of all the young people, all of them thankfully gained qualification because they enjoyed it. Right. And not only they enjoyed it, they could relate to it. It's an everyday thing for them.
Right. I mean, I thank you very much. So, I mean, I would ask you the same question: the importance of education, and at what levels it is ever so important.
Can I just add to what the sister has said, that there are apprenticeship schemes which are taking place, whereby if a child is not so academic, then they can easily join an apprenticeship scheme between the age of 14 to 16, where employers take them on. And this is a government-funded scheme whereby if they are working well with hands-on work, then they can develop, and the employers have a chance to employ them when they leave school at 16.
Right.
And going back to your question of education,
importance of education amongst which group is
yes,
ever so important.
Education is important for every group.
Right.
Throughout humanity, and it's our religious duty to go out and seek education. Education is a key vehicle to taking you out of poverty. It enables you to have a better home life, it enables you to get better jobs, and it is easily transferable. You can take education wherever in the world and you will be able to survive.
It's an asset that you can fall back on.
Indeed.
Okay. Now, education, I want to talk about your project because I'm quite, to a degree, I'm inspired by the fact that, you, first of all, a working class citizen, not really a traditional Asian woman that we actually experience in our families, and I speak for the masses. I think it's a matter of pride for us that we have, working Asian representatives sitting in front of us today. And not only that you're just working, you're actually working, A, for the family, and 2, working for the community. Acorn Primary School.
Yes.
Can you talk about that project?
I've been, I trained as a primary school teacher many years ago. I've been working in education for over 20 years, and I'm an advanced skills teacher. And having worked and lived in the area, I have found that the children aren't making the progress in literacy and numeracy as they should be doing in the mainstream society.
Okay, what do you mean by that, as they should be?
As they should be, because you see, the government requirement is for children to attain a level 4 and above in literacy, and the same for in numeracy when they leave Key Stage 2. And in the inner city areas where most of the Asian population is placed is where the children are not getting the government requirement is 74%. Now, amongst some of the schools, the children are receiving, there's a smaller percentage of children receiving that level 4 in numeracy and literacy.
Okay, so what is it that's causing for them to underachieve?
There are a number of factors. We can't blame it on one particular factor. It could be that the child itself needs support through help with their grammar or their number work. It could be that the parents need the support, and lots of parents wish to support their children, but they don't know how to.
Right, so you're referring to parents who've actually migrated from non-English speaking regions, i.e. Asia, for example?
Yes, possibly Asia, but we are also looking at second and third generation parents who have been born here, but their spouse is probably from abroad, and that's where they can't. If the mother is from abroad, then she also if she can't help, then she needs some help. If she can't help her child, for example, with the reading. So
if the other half is not on the same pace educationally, then that means there would be a gap in the training of the child.
Yes,
basically.
in the education of the child, and also it could be that leadership in the schools, in the primary schools, or good teachers, and an understanding of the culture of the school population.
So what are you trying to do with Acorn?
What we're trying to do with Acorn, we put in a bid for a free school application.
Right.
Alhamdulillah, we've been very successful in getting an interview with the Department for Education.
Okay.
We were invited to talk about our application, and since then we've had some feedback, and they have said that there is some further work to be done on our application, some work on the staffing structure and the financial plan.
Okay.
And we are going to put the bid in again to set up a free school, and a primary free school in inner city Birmingham, where we're going to address the needs of the children where they are underachieving in numeracy and literacy. And this is going to address especially the English as an additional language element, which we always hear that these children speak English as an additional language, and therefore they can't do as well as monolingual English speakers. Research has shown that is not the case. Children who speak English as an additional language can think in 2 domains, and they do far better. However, we need to move them from BICS, which is basic interpersonal communicative skills, to CALP, which is cognitive, academic, language proficiency, and that's the strategy we hope to use.
Right, okay, so what I'm hearing is that we're focusing on areas, or I should say vicinities, whereby there is an influx of immigrants, or less indigenous and more.
What we're saying is that
what sort of areas are you focusing on, if I could speak plain English?
Yes, of course. In inner city Birmingham, we are focusing on inner city areas where the children are underachieving, because that's where you've got poverty, that's where you've got deprivation, that's where you've got large families, that's where you've got large immigrants who wish to help their children, but they can't. The schools are doing a good job. We can't point it to one factor. It's a number of things.
Can we name some? Let's say one of them was that the other half is possibly immigrated and not very educated and can't really integrate with the society and not add value to the educational upbringing of the child. That's one of the factors. Is this the only factor?
No, this isn't the only factor, because you need good teachers in schools.
Oh, right, okay.
You need good role models in schools too. Children, role models which children can relate to. We need strong leadership. We need a clear strategy in the school where you've got monitoring and assessment taking place, and a good curriculum. A curriculum which is suitable to the needs of those children, because one size doesn't fit all.
Right.
And it's giving parents choices.
So, Sister Caroline, what do you think are the drivers for these children who are actually underachieving, and also a generation? Clearly, I think Sister Amina is literally just looking at the contemporary generation. What are the generation that's gone past that primary, and what are they doing in the society now? Do you think the troublemakers are the ones who actually missed the boat?
If you look at post-16, when they leave higher education, when they leave GCSEs and go into higher education, I think they haven't missed the boat. I think there's no opportunity for them, and I think sometimes the system is there for them to fail.
Right.
In order of, like you said, if they're deprived, there's not money going in, they need the money to feed the kids, or they see the parents stressing, so they take a burden on themselves to go out and make some quick money, and that results in more likely crime. To help the bills go, and they sacrifice a lot of their education into making money. And I know, even though it's wrong, you've got to understand why they're doing it. And also you can see a repetitive cycle going around. If the dad's not an educated parent, then who are they going to look up to? Because the first role model in the home is the parents.
So what you're saying is that all the parents who are actually watching the show right now, and let's say, I can see a lot of examples within my family, and I'm sure you can, and you can as well, where the other half has actually literally travelled from either India, Pakistan, or Bangladesh, and when they're watching this, and now they're starting to worry. Maybe they're not worrying about it right now, but after watching the show, they then start to think about, okay, what does underachieving mean? So, how would you define, or possibly, how would I would actually take?
Underachievers with me in my profession, believe it or not, when I worked for 16 to 18 on another project, half the kids who came, half the young people who came onto the project were only diagnosed as ADHD, autism, when they left school at the later stage of the main education, which had impact on why they didn't get straight A's.
Autism, do you say?
Autism and ADHD, so they had behavioural problems or additional needs are needed, but the school, obviously, it went past and they were ignored. Now, without the school or the teachers not monitoring it correctly, it can be ignored, which has an impact on young people when they leave without any qualification, which they can't go to further education because you need 5C and A grade above. They can't go to any jobs because they need qualifications, and that's why they become NEETs, and that's why they go in a downhill spiral.
Right, so if they haven't, so we're going back to the same problem.
I think Sister's talking about clear monitoring processes in the schools to detect special needs children, or children which have an extra need. For example, behavior problems. ADHD is a behavior problem. Now, with that, you need to have good leadership.
Yeah.
That's one thing.
Yeah.
So at school, you mean?
At
Yeah.
school, yes.
At
The head
identifying
teacher,
level.
the senior leadership team needs to be quite active, and also to engage the parents, because I don't, we shouldn't really be pointing the finger at the parents or the communities or their choice of who they marry and their spouse, because
Good.
this isn't.
I'm going to interrupt you there. Amina, sorry, we will continue. We have a caller on the line. Assalamu alaikum. Hello. Hello, assalamu alaikum. I'm sorry, the line's dropped. If you're watching the show, please join us again. I'm sure there was a technical problem. Going back to, sorry, we interrupted you.
Yeah, we were, I was talking about special educational needs,
leadership at the school level,
and leadership at school level, but also to engaging the parents. And if parents don't know how to help their children, simple structures for support by the school will enable the parents to help their children, such as Inspire workshops. And, and lots of schools are doing that.
What are Inspire workshops?
Our Inspire workshops are workshops for parents in helping them to support the children in literacy, in numeracy, in getting their homework, getting them prepared. And you know, we're not born being parents. Being a parent is learnt over time. And if you have your first child, yes, exactly. Yeah. It's, and if you have your first child, you're not really clear on whether what the rules are for the getting, for example, the homework done, getting the child to school.
That's a very interesting point. We've got the caller, and we'll continue from there. Assalamu alaikum. Can I ask who's calling, please? Could you please turn the volume down, please? If you're watching us from your television, can you please turn the volume down? Ji, assalamu alaikum and welcome to the show. You're speaking to us live. Who's calling and where are you calling from?
Hello?
Ji, assalamu alaikum. Who's calling? I'm sorry, there was a problem, I think, communicating. Next time when you call us, we request that you call us and then turn the volume down and speak to us from your telephone. I believe we've got another caller on the line. Assalamu alaikum. Assalamu alaikum. I think there appears to be a problem. Yeah, sorry, you know, apart from the technical glitches and sudden pauses, going back to your point, which was a very interesting point.
Yes, a support for the parents, for the schools to get the points across, for parents to realise that schooling is very important. If a child misses one day of their school life, it has an impact on their learning. They fall behind with their learning, so teachers have to do catch-up work with them. The child will miss out, and therefore he's not going to feel confident the next day when he's missed out on his number bonds, for example.
Yeah.
So it's, first of all, parents need to realise that unless a child is seriously ill, not to take too many absences, to make sure that the child gets into school on time.
Attendance and punctuality.
Punctuality, attendance, support with the homework.
It is also, it's a general feeling, and the stats actually prove this, that schools within the, I mean, this is the, you know, schools within the vicinities whereby we talked about, you know, the deprived areas and ethnicity-rich areas, they're overcrowded. Where there would be 16 students in a classroom elsewhere, there would be 28 or above. On average. Do you think that's playing a part and adding extra pressure on teachers, therefore they can't actually give full attention to the child?
Legally, you can have up to 30 children in a class.
Exactly, yes.
A teacher is trained to manage 30 children.
Right.
And also legally, there is a teaching assistant in the classroom in a primary school.
Okay.
So a teacher is fully trained to do that. However, it's understanding all the other issues and the cultural barriers for the teacher. If the teacher is not familiar with the needs of the community that she's serving, then obviously there are going to be issues. And the parents also need to do their bit. For example, getting their child to read every night, or sitting there and reading a story with their child.
Well, that goes back to
You can actually pretend to read and follow the story.
Well, that goes back to the same concern we raised, and that is where we know that one half of the parents is actually not able to read or write. And then, you know, by the signs of things, that, you know, every family where the demographics are similar, whereby one half is educated and the other half, or I should say literate, and the other half is not literate or possibly imported, there would be that problem in any case anyway. So what would be the solution to this problem? Because obviously if the mother is you know, an immigrant from India or Pakistan or Bangladesh or any country where English is not the first language spoken, how do you expect them to cope with a situation whereby, so that means their child, historically speaking, would always be underachieving?
I believe we all have to work collectively as a community.
Okay.
We all have to do our bit. For example, myself or sister or yourself, we all have to do our little bit on raising awareness and helping the community to help themselves, and hold little workshops to show them that the importance of education, the impact it's having on the future generation, the impact it's having on their child and to their home.
So making them aware. So it's an educational process where who would make the parents aware of what they're going through?
There are agencies involved, are current, actually active to help support parents from minority communities.
Right, okay.
To support them, where it's one-to-one homework, go to home, to not only help the child but help the parent. But I think we're being Asian community that we don't like getting help.
Okay.
And I think it's a pride thing, and if it's a pride thing for the individual, they don't realise the knock-on effect it has on their child's development.
So are we referring to special children?
No, just any children who need extra support for homeschooling or extra additional reading, and the mum can't do it because she can't read or write English herself.
Right.
There are agencies out there, and they are aware of it in schools.
Right, so Kuratlan, you work with that particular, you know, this is your part, your expertise, part of your expertise, that you actually work with that particular age group, that particular area of group of people where they haven't got that sort of infrastructure in the family where that level of support is available. Do you not think, or do you not come across that teachers or schools should highlight that problem to the parents and offer a level of help or work accordingly?
You would. 5 years ago, I would say yes, teachers would be responsible, but the way they're overworked, some teachers are taking work home. Their job is not 9 to 3 now, it's weekends 9 till 12, 9 till 10 o'clock at night. Okay, so teachers are in because there's such a short demand of short lack of teachers present, they've overworked. So you can't blame the teachers. I think teachers and parents have to work in hand in hand, because the main goal is to look after that young person they're in care of.
Amina, yourself from the academic, so here's, I think you need to defend the integrity of the teacher.
Yeah, the teachers do work very hard. Most teachers work hard, but in any sector you will get a different mix of people. Some teachers who are very dedicated work very hard, and others who work less hard. However, we've got the parents need to go into the school. Strong parents will help the child to do better in their schooling. Likewise, a strong school will help the student do better in their schooling. However, imagine the impact on the child if strong parents and strong schools.
Is there anything in the system that helps filter this problem through, or possibly a check and balance kind of situation on teachers, where teachers who are actually working in the areas whereby there's a lot of underachieving children, or majority, for example, certain areas in Birmingham or southeast Birmingham, ethnicity rich area, we know that there are a lot of Asians who live in that particular vicinity. In London we've got various vicinities where it's heavily Asian populated areas, and that goes out to all the way up to Bradford and then Glasgow and then Edinburgh. So is there anything in the system, because you're fully aware of how the system works, which looks at the teachers, how they operate with these type of children, if they are giving them attention that they deserve. Is there anything in the system?
Yeah. Most teachers work very hard, and they want all of their class to do well.
Is that an assumption?
It's not an assumption, it's a fact.
Okay.
Most teachers do work very hard. And it's always the parents that the teacher wishes to see at parents' night are the parents who don't turn up.
Okay.
They are the ones who send the children in late. They are the ones who've lost their book bags, haven't bought in their PE kit,
Okay.
are constantly absent for minor reasons, and those are the parents which bring who are not really helping their child to do better. The child might be quite clever, quite bright, and the teacher wants to help that child to make more improvement in their work, but without the parents' help, it's not possible to do so.
So if this is how the demographics of school and how the teachers are actually operating, so that what it sounds to me like teachers who actually work in the schools in those particular areas where there are a lot of Asian or ethnic background floodings happen, basically, they would have a harder task to do. Is that fair to say?
They have got a harder task to do.
Only to identify the cultural barriers, because if you go to predominantly ethnic areas, the same teacher will have the same problem with those set of kids whose parents do the same thing. So I don't think I think teachers in inner city schools, main barriers are identifying, if they're not from the same culture, the cultural issues.
Right.
Because if you take them to, say, a predominantly white inner city area, and you will still get the same parents there, but of different ethnic group.
Right.
So the same issues arise.
Can I just say, it makes sometimes it makes a teacher's life easier if you don't have demanding parents.
Yes.
Okay.
And therefore, it's
how do you explain that point?
It's
for the benefit of the teachers who are watching.
For benefit of the teachers. Well, you see, in the more affluent areas, as I've said earlier,
right,
that if the parents are demanding, so they expect to see homework, they expect for them to bring their book bags, and they expect to take part. That we've got parents who actually take an active role in the topics that they're doing in the foundation subjects.
Right.
What are they learning in literacy and numeracy for that term or that half term? And in other cases, parents are not aware of what is going on with the child's learning. So if the parents aren't really going to ask again and again, then how much is the teacher expected to do to chase
the equal responsibility lies with the parents. Right, so all the parents who are actually watching this show, I would request you to join the show and give us a call and tell us how you feel about how we're talking about education on the grassroots level and how parents' responsibility is shared with the teacher, because purely as ourselves being a representative of the Asian community, I think we need to somewhat understand what the problem is and hopefully come to a resolution for a better society in the coming years. Now, moving back to yourself, Kuratalain, so fair enough, we've understood that there is a problem on the grassroots level, on the basis of academics, and also education on the grassroots level needs to be slightly sharpened by value that parents need to add. But do you think what's happening in a current scenario, because the age group that you work within is pretty diverse, so from 13 to 25, moving on to from 18 to 25, in that particular age group there is a huge gap of I'd say educational gap, which means that we have a lot of GCSE dropouts. So after 16, it's no longer responsibility of the state to monitor the education and make sure the literacy standards are met. Do you think it is, what's causing lack of education between the 18 and 25?
You can't just pinpoint on one specific factor. It's the individual themselves,
right,
how they experience, how they felt going to high school. That has a big impact. Family again, I know we emphasising family, but I think family, if you've got pushy parents in a good way, who encouragement, then obviously you set the bar, you know where you've got to go and you've got direction, you've got someone pushing you. But since they leave 16, they can do what they want. So, and And I think financially, I think they can't afford to go. If they come from a deprived area and they haven't got a job, now who's going to help them buy those books that the state used to buy that they can't buy no more, or the tuition fee or the travel expense? So it has a everything has a knock-on effect.
It is also understood that some of our parents of 18 or above age group, because either one of the parent was still funding the family back home, didn't end up funding their own children to the standards where they felt that they weren't deprived, and parents left them to be dependent on the state. Is that a common scenario, or is something that's affecting our children not to study in the higher end?
I don't think that's a fair comment that the parents not literally force their child to depend on state benefits, because the young people I work with, they're getting embarrassed going to sign on week in, week out, because they're not meant to. They want a job, they worked hard, or some do and some don't. The ones that don't, unfortunately, the economic situation we're in at the moment has restricted them to sign on, whereas they could get a job. I know young people who had A levels, but they've gone down the crime route because it's quick, easy money, because they can't get a job, or they want to go to university like their peers, but they can't afford to. So
the importance of educated parents, because it is often said that educated parents means educated children, and you know, our parents who are watching, and they're not really educated, but obviously they've got this aspire and drive that they want their children to do well. They want their children to become doctors, engineers. As you speak to, when you go to mosque, when you go to social gatherings, weddings, you speak to an auntie sitting in the corner who's not educated herself, but when you ask her what is it that your son wants to become, and she would, you know, in the first breath they would say doctor or an engineer, or possibly a barrister, or possibly a politician, or somebody in a he's going to go to Oxford, Cambridge, or Yale University. So how do you address that when, you know, I mean, your point was that, you know, when there are either one half of the family is not educated, then their children, you know, metaphorically speaking, would be underachieving.
What I'm saying is the help is out there. You have to look for help.
For those parents?
For those parents.
So parents who are watching us today, and they want their children under the age group of, let's say, up to 16, or they're in schools, help is there. What sort of help is it?
Help is there. Help is there from the school.
Okay. And
from the local children's centres, through mother and toddler groups, and parents, mothers or fathers can access that help and go into the school and speak to the teacher, show your concern. Teachers will be more than willing to help your child, but it's the way we sometimes come across. Instead of approaching them in a demanding manner, if we sort of ask them nicely and say, look, I need some help for my child, or show your concerns, teachers are more than willing to help.
Okay, well, as you, all the viewers who are watching, the idea of today's show is that this is a voice of youth. So before talking about youth, what we wanted to understand was how these issues actually come about before getting to the youth stage. And as a result of that, what we actually did today is that we actually started talking about the grassroots level, because as we understand, and the senior analysts understand, and hopefully our parents sitting at home understand as well, that ultimately it is education that's resulting in various issues, i.e. criminology studies understand the same fact as well. The problem around youth in higher education and purely stems from lack of education on the grassroots level. We would like to hear from you and hopefully get involved with the show. There is an email address we'd like to hear from you as well. The email address is VOY, which is Voice of Youth, at Hidayat.tv. And we have our panelists here today, Sayyida Kuratulain Zaidi, who is Youth Community Development Manager, currently working with various councils, and we also have with us Amina Bukhari, who is an academic and senior analyst in that particular division, worked with the education sector for more than 20 years and currently working on a major project which is Acorn Primary School. for the underachieving. So we understood that there is a problem on the grassroots level, and education is of ever so important, paramount importance in our community, in particular Asian, and that is something which needs addressing. What we understood, parents need to contact the schools and pay more attention to the children's education. Now let's talk about a bit high level issues, which are the major issues, and the major issues are what's happening to our youth today. Is there anybody who is going to because I'll be honest with you, this is from speaking to various youth and witnessing what's happening in the socio-economic climate of the industry and what's happening within community and across the society. Youth are pretty neglected, and it is I'd say a unanimous thought. What do you think is causing that?
Again, I firmly believe it stems from education. When they're not getting the levels and they're bored in the classroom and they're not achieving the SATs levels or the GCSEs, and they cannot get jobs or cannot get into further education, they're bored, they might be hanging around street corners or getting in with the wrong crowd,
right.
And that's where the problems arise. I know of some youth organisations who are doing voluntary work, who are getting these youth off the street and getting involved in things like archery, for example. I know a wonderful group of youth organisation which is getting young men involved in doing archery, and they're actually working towards going for awards. And it's a way of getting children engaged and getting them to learn about good discipline, about achieving goals and a feeling of self-worth.
Right. So that's fantastic. So there is a project that's helping youth, take them off. But what is it that establishment doing? Because establishment has announced that 650 million would be taken out of public spending, out of which 480 million was directly associated with funding to the youth and various projects. And I'm sure your two projects have been a victim of this particular spend cut as well.
Oh, definitely. I think without, especially with voluntary organisations seeking funding now, it's really hard when compared to 2 years ago.
Right.
We had so many different pockets of funding you could apply to, and we're successful now. Probably 50% of funding bids that you're doing are going to be successful because, for example, there'll be 10 funding pots and there's 20 organisations.
Right.
Before there were 40 funding pots, 20 organisations, so everyone had a bit of the money they needed. It has I've seen a dramatic effect. It has without organisations, youth organisations closing. The summer holidays are coming now.
Yeah.
Back in 2006, I had £20,000 to spend in an inner city area for summer play school scheme where they work with 16 to 25s, no, 13 to 16, sorry. Take them out fishing, gardening, sport, accredited training. Now we've got barely 5,000, the same area, same young people, 5,000.
Well, you say that.
So I think the government has got to invest more from their end to get the end results that we all want, and that's young people to achieve. And
but if we talk about let's talk about the nations where government isn't heavily investing in the youth, and we don't see that level of crime in the youth.
I think it's our culture.
It is ever so growing.
I think not the Asian culture. I think the wider culture is like it got this like I want it now attitude. I think a lot of young people have got this I want it now attitude where they don't want to work. Where I was raised up, if I want something, I've got to work hard to get it, and I'm still working hard to get to where I want. If you ask a 19-year-old, I want those pair of shoes, I'm going to get them regardless of how I get them, and that's any young person. So. And
is this that youth's fault that they want nice things for themselves?
I think the media has a big influence on what. I think young people are influenced so much more than I was, because growing up we were influenced by family or our community, but now young people are more influenced by the media and their wider peers. And I think their family now is their friends on the street corners. Okay, so
briefly, and I mean that's because obviously yourself a mother as well, and it may be in the heart and soul of parents' issue more than it is children a few years ago, and now it has become heart and soul of youth's issue rather than parents' issue, and that's matrimonial affairs. Because what matrimonial affairs has done now is created a drift between the parents, which given our society a bad name, and referring to arranged marriages under peer pressure. How do you think that's affecting our youth and their morale and trust in the parents?
Yeah. It's a two-way thing between the parents and the youth. Parents need to also adapt to the new climate around them. When we were growing up, it was a different climate. We were expected to have an arranged marriage, and it was something which we would accept. Whereby now it's different. Youth are not so agreeable to having an arranged marriage. It's the same as before. The children thought it was acceptable to marry amongst cousins, whereby I in my own family, my children wouldn't consider the concept of marrying cousins because they think it's too close within their own
bloodstream,
and it's just that it's this that's my sister or my brother. So right. Likewise, you also need to, as a parent, I think as parents we also need to understand the needs of our children and change slightly.
Who do you think the responsibility sits with? The youth or parents?
It's both. It's both. It's amongst the youth and with the parents. Youth have to also accept that this is our culture. It shouldn't be diluted. We worked very hard to build up our culture, our identity, our faith, and we have to follow that. However,
is culture not part of education? So how can you, as parent, literally impose the culture, their culture, literally when they're 24, 25, or possibly in some cases 18, 19, and say, by the way, welcome to the culture. Sure. Now you're 18, you're going to marry your cousin in Pakistan or India or Bangladesh, who is, however, old, and you don't know them, but eventually you will, and you're getting married. Do you think that would...
It depends on your interpretation of culture.
Right.
I wouldn't dream of forcing my children to expect them to marry from somebody from abroad that they've never met, they don't know of, and is of a different culture to them.
Right.
Because I know that marriage is going to hit a rocky path. So I wouldn't really expect my child to marry somebody from abroad unless he desired to. I mean, if he wanted to go and get married, then fine. But we must direct our children to make correct choices in marriage and not to dilute our religion and our culture. However, we still have to understand what their needs are, and to direct them into choosing a partner.
Last few minutes and something from you on this particular matrimonial issue. We have literally a minute.
I think they've got to work together.
Parents
and teachers have to work together to mould a young person. I think now the young person is an adult. I think the parents got to respect their views, and the child's got to respect the parents know best. I think they've got to work hand in hand to fight.
Brilliant. Well, thank you very much, both our panelists, Sayyida Quratul Anzadi and Amina Bukhari. Viewers, it's been very interesting debate today. It was literally the first episode of a strategic and long-term show, which is Voice of Youth. What we intend to do on this particular show is give our youth a chance to actually ask the questions which haven't been asked our parents up until now, and also ask the responsibles, establishment, society, government, and who is responsible for the mass deprivation of our youth in today's day and age: unemployment, education, matrimonial affairs, and also opportunities as to where the vision is going in terms of religion. Please do write to us. Our email address is voiceofyouth, which is VOY, at hidayat.tv. I'm your host Ali Mohsin Hashmi. Inshallah, we'll see you next week. It's Saturday and Sunday, so until then, we'll see you shortly. Khuda Hafiz. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.